Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we have any new members or guests, let's see, either wave your hands, or if you'd like to say something to us, just unmute and say hello. New members or guests? We are excited because we have been getting new members, and hopefully we'll be able to see them in person really soon. I'm going to quickly do a little recap of the League of Women Voters North Carolina Convention. We had 7 delegates representing Moore County at the state convention last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They included Jay Emery, Bonnie Matthews, Terry Watt, Ann Torek, Peggy Crawford, Mary Lou Burnett, and me. The State League is congratulated because they had a very successful and amazingly smoothly run virtual convention. It was great to even be there virtually. If you haven't already, read over our most recent newsletter for more detailed information. I had put in a long article about their focus in the convention, and I think it's important for our local league to kind of know what's going on there. We really want to congratulate Jo Nicholas. She's continuing as our state president. Mary Lou Burnett will be a state board member, and Peggy Crawford will continue on the nominating committee. So thank you to those 3 members who keep us in contact with the state. We're glad to see everyone here for this May meeting. Welcome. And I am going to turn it over now for our presentation to Agnes Gioconda. Thank you, Agnes.
Great. Hi, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce Bonnie Baker, who is a retired Army colonel. She serves as the director of the FORSCOM Ready and Resilient Division, responsible for promoting soldier and family programs. Her military experience includes a variety of assignments in intelligence, education, strategic and operational planning, and personnel management. Ms. Baker's intelligence experience spans a range of military operations from Europe to Central and South America and the Middle East. As an assistant professor at the United States Military Academy, she developed a senior seminar on intelligence and national security, in addition to teaching courses in international relations and European politics. In her role as an instructor, she partnered with representatives from the Republic of Georgia and Azerbaijan. Prior to moving to Southern Pines, she served as the Military and Veterans Affairs Liaison for the city of Norfolk, Virginia. Ms. Baker holds a master's degree in political science from Duke University and a bachelor's degree in economics and government from St. Lawrence University. And if all that's not enough, she also had the good sense to buy the house next door to me. Bonnie, we are delighted to have you speak to the League of Women Voters today.
That's my biggest highlight, was moving next door to you. So yeah, good morning, everybody. And I really want to thank Agnes for inviting me to participate today and for that introduction. As you could tell, I have had a really broad range of experience while I was active duty. I was active duty for 25 years and I've been retired now for, almost 12 years, I guess, and doing a whole range of other assignments. This is a rare opportunity for me, and that I don't often do presentations outside the military community. So I guess I'd ask that if I use an acronym or something that doesn't make sense, that you just interrupt me and ask me to clarify. And I really thought that I would give you kind of a broad overview of some of the work that I'm doing currently, and then focus a little bit on our suicide prevention efforts, and then just open it up for any comments or questions based on other things that are going on. So currently I moved here about just over 4 years ago, and I took a position here at, so it's at Fort Bragg. It's with the United States Army Forces Command, as Agnes said. And so FORSCOM is the higher headquarters for really all of the operational army, the conventional operational army that's in the United States. So we don't focus just on Fort Bragg support or Fort Bragg soldiers. It's commands that are located anywhere from, you know, the state of Washington to Texas to Louisiana, New York. It's all over the United States. About, I would say, 224,000 soldiers, not counting our civilians and family members that we support. So I came down into this position really to focus as a program manager, looking at how do we reduce some of the high-risk behaviors that we see in the Army. And that's a whole range of behaviors. We kind of take a public health approach to looking at suicide, substance abuse, sexual assaults, you know, any kind of unhealthy or high risk indisciplined behaviors, and figuring out community approaches to reduce those behaviors. And then part of my portfolio that I oversee are all of the soldier and family support programs. They're provided by other commands to our soldiers, but they're designed to help with PCS moves, you know, sponsoring families into new communities, financial counseling, relationship counseling, all those types of services. And so a lot of what we do is try to coordinate that support and ensure that our commanders and soldiers and families have, you know, really everything that they need. What's interesting right now, I think, in the Army is that we do have a chief of staff of the Army who has been very focused on putting people first. So I'm hoping that during these couple of years, it's an opportunity where we reinvigorate some of these programs that, you know, over the years with budget cuts seem to always, you know, get cut and become less effective over time. So when General McConville came in a couple of years ago, he immediately started this effort called Quality of Life. And it's a task force that he established trying to improve really life in 5 specific areas across the Army. So he's looking at our healthcare, our PCS moves, our access to childcare and education services, which are important to our families, as well as improving spouse employment, because as you can imagine, soldiers move frequently and it's hard for spouses to maintain their careers and throughout those moves. So they're looking at ways to improve like remote work opportunities, the license reciprocity across commands or excuse me, across state lines, so that, you know, if you're going from North Carolina out to Washington State, your license in particular areas would transfer. We're looking to improve PCS moves. There's a lot of issues with, you know, shipment of household goods and the stress that happens for a family and soldiers during a transition time. And then they also have focused on 4 specific installations that are considered kind of remote and isolated. Fort Wainwright, Alaska, and Fort Polk, Louisiana, Fort Irwin in California, really trying to help the specific issues out at those installations. And then we've recently added Fort Hood, Texas. And I just mentioned Fort Hood. So on the one hand, we had the chief of staff really started off, and from the first day he took office, said people are my #1 priority. We've also had some events occur nationally and with the Army that have gotten a lot of media and congressional attention that's also caused an increased emphasis on some people-related issues. So just recently, he created what he calls a People First Task Force. And what we're trying to do with that is really to reduce some of these harmful behaviors that we see across the Army. And so part of that, we were seeing an increase in the harmful behaviors, which I'll speak about. But we also are really reacting to some of the things that were happening in our country. So as you know, like last year, there were a lot of issues with racism and extremism in our country. And so an increased focus within the Army about, do we have extremist organizations amongst our formations, and what do we need to do to improve that? And then also, with the Me Too movement, between that and a specific event that happened at Fort Hood, we've had a increase in really looking at our programs to address sexual harassment and sexual assault in our services. And so if you, I don't know how much of the news from Texas you would hear, but there was a specialist who, went missing and unfortunately was found later had been murdered. But in the time leading up to it, there were a lot of issues in how the Army dealt with that situation. One of which was that she had indicated to her family that she had been sexually harassed. And so those external activities have also increased congressional focus on what we're doing and how we're handling situations. And you've probably heard over the years, there's been a lot of congressional interest in how the services writ large deal with sexual harassment. Can we trust commanders to deal with it, immediately and with justice for the victim and protect the victim? So a lot of focus on those particular areas. And right now I get to be kind of the lead for all of that for our command. I often think I'm like a mile wide and an inch deep of trying to work all these different programs, but it's an exciting time. I guess would highlight that what we're seeing in the Army, right, is not unique to the Army. And when we look at suicides, I want to kind of highlight that. I think, our soldiers are a product of our society. And so we have some unique challenges and opportunities in how we deal with these problems within the Army that maybe aren't exactly the same as what we can do in our society. But I think one of our challenges is we're bringing in these young kids who come from very diverse backgrounds, who have different sense of right and wrong, what was acceptable from where they came from to as compared to what we believe is our Army values. And they have different capabilities and resilience to deal with some of the challenges that they face. You figure we're pulling them out of their hometowns, sending them off to training, sending them off to their first unit, never mind eventually to a deployment somewhere, and just really their, not just their physical ability to deal with it, but their mental and emotional capacity to deal with those challenges and maybe cope with setbacks for one of the first times in their lives that they're have to learn to kind of fail forward. But I think one of our opportunities is that we do have the ability to kind of coach, train, and mentor young people. What we have to do is think about it more broadly than just military skills and physical fitness. We have to think about what are the individuals coming with in terms of their mental skills and their toughness, and trying to coach them through that. I think we also have a unique ability to provide a safe environment. And that's one of the areas, we're working on in terms of just making sure our barracks and housing are, are healthy, that we've heard of the mold issues that they've had in some of our housing. We've had to improve that and improve lighting and barracks and security cameras and those kind of things so that we do have a secure environment for our soldiers and families. And I think we have a unique ability to really care and protect our soldiers that maybe doesn't exist outside our community. So those are kind of the range of issues that I'm currently involved with and working on. What I thought I'd do is just kind of take a couple minutes and talk more specifically about suicides. And I wanted to address it. Again, it's not just an Army issue, right? It's a issue that impacts all of us and our society. And I thought for you as the League of Women Voters of just, what does it mean locally of thinking about suicides in our society? So with I just wanted to, I took some time to look, mostly I'm familiar with my Army statistics because we look at those a lot, but I just wanted to, you know, kind of pull in some of the other data about suicides and just share that with you for a minute. So when I looked, just so, you know, right now, the World Health Organization would say that there are about 1 million people die from suicide every year. And so they look at that, that's about a death every 40 seconds of someone that's making a choice to kill themselves. And here in the United States, we've seen in the last, since 1999, an increase in our suicides rates of about 33%. And, you know, we can talk about maybe a little bit about why that might be, but right now it's the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death for our 10 to 34-year-olds. You know, I think sometimes it's easy to miss that if you haven't been directly impacted by a suicide, but and just a couple other statistics just to share with you is so I don't know if this is good news or bad news for you women on the call, but men have over 3.5 times greater likelihood that they're going to you know, die by suicide than women do. And that the highest suicide rate right now, and this is not population that I work with, but it's males 65 and older. Probably related to health, you know, kind of issues, but, and then followed by males of the age 45 to 54 are our highest suicides rate. And then among women, it's in the age group of 45 to 54 that have the highest suicides rates. You know, we hear a lot about veteran suicide. And in fact, right now there's a DoD Veterans Affairs Suicide Prevention Conference going on. And we do see greater suicides among our veterans than non-veterans, but it's about 1.5 times the number. And I thought one of the interesting things that I wasn't aware of is, you know, when we listen to all this gun violence that we have, that over 2/3 of our gun-related deaths are suicides. And I know for the military, we see right now we're tracking about 70% of our suicides are by a gunshot wound versus, you know, drug overdose or hanging or any of those types of methods, which in some ways gets to thinking through how do we prevent some of the suicides. And then just bringing it a little bit closer to home, North Carolina actually does fairly well. Out of the 50 states, they're ranked 14th, you know, with a suicide rate of about 14 per 100,000 compared to Wyoming, which is considered a little bit more isolated, that has a higher rate of about 25 per 100,000. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the statistics locally, just because, like I said, this isn't a unique Army problem. What is interesting is like our rates are higher, right? So when you look at the global rate, they would say it's about 16 per 100,000. The US rate, just regular rate, is about 15 per 100,000. And then we oftentimes look at, well, what's the normalized rates? So, because in the military, we have a very unique population in terms of young men, you know, and just what the ranks. So they'll normalize that to the US, and then that rate's at 25. And unfortunately, our Army rate is quite a bit higher than that. So we closed out last year with almost 38 per 100,000. And right now, this year, you know, we do it by calendar year, but we're already up to about 42 per 100,000. So, you know, it's a real tragedy. Every single, you know, loss of an individual is a real tragedy. And I think, you know, I'll talk a little bit about the reasons why we're seeing some of those, but I think one of the the challenges is for all of us, I don't know, I think we've all probably been touched in some way by a suicide. And so we know it's not just the loss of that one person, but the impact and the tragedy it has on all of us when you've lost somebody, and just a lot of challenges to understand why, you know, it might have happened, and to kind of accept and forgive and to move on. And so as we look at it in the Army, we're trying to make sure that we're also thinking about care of their teammates and their family, and dealing with it after the fact. So just maybe a couple thoughts about, so why are we seeing this increase, you know? And I believe there's three primary reasons that we're seeing it. I think first of all, in our society, I think it's maybe more acceptable. I think as from when maybe we were all growing up, you know, suicide was really, I think the insurance laws and religion and a lot of the just societal expectations were different than they are now. It may be that not as many suicides were reported, right? That they occurred but weren't reported that way, just because of those societal issues at the time. So that may contribute to the increase we're seeing. But we also notice with our soldiers, when you look at what they've posted on social media, it's like it was a heroic thing to do, to kill themselves in a particular situation. And that's a societal dynamic I think that we all need to be concerned about, that really isn't the solution, and try to find ways to disincentivize and discourage that. The other thing I think that is relevant across the Army and our society is, I think in general, young people especially are less resilient. You know, I don't think they've had to deal with the same kind of hardships, and haven't developed those skills in terms of how to deal with them once they encounter them. And I think about it in terms of failing forward. You know, when you don't get that soccer trophy, you know, how do you deal with that and, you know, move on and be successful at your next endeavor? And, you know, of course, the young kids coming into the Army are right in that age group where they still haven't really developed and matured all those capabilities. And I think that's a big challenge and contributing reason why we're seeing the increase in suicides. And then the third reason, from my perspective, is I do think we're nationally seeing an increase in mental health issues. I'm not a mental health specialist myself, but when you look at any data that's out there, they show that you know, that there's a real, I think, challenge with people being willing to seek help, and our healthcare system being able to support them, and just kind of the stigma for seeking help. The other, you know, so I think those are the underlying reasons why we're seeing the increase. But we also see other contributing factors, at least in the Army. A lot of times back about 10, 15 years ago, when we really focused on suicides, the belief was it was related to trauma coming back from the wars, or that they had brain injuries, and that was the primary reason for our increase. And now we're seeing a real mix. We see at least 50% or more have never had any kind of deployment, never mind combat, right? That they might have gone to Germany for 10 months, but haven't necessarily seen combat. So not trying to minimize the impact of post-traumatic stress or the impacts of soldiers who were injured and had trauma coming back from war, but that's not the primary reason why we're seeing suicides right now. One of the main concerns is that we see now is relationship breakups. And so we see so often that they have no other underlying factors. They just have a girlfriend, most cases, that break up with them. And that's their choice, is to kill themselves rather than learn to deal with it. Other things, I think this idea of a sense of isolation, and for our soldiers, of course, as they're being moved away from their homes and families and stuff, this feeling alone and not included or not having a purpose, feeling a sense of like a burden to those around them can contribute to that choice. And sometimes, less often, we see financial issues. And then sometimes this a shame event, right? That they've been caught doing something that they're ashamed of, or their family would be ashamed of, and that's the trigger event. So I think in general, we've seen, more often that it'll be just one trigger event that might cause it. But in a lot of cases, at least 50% have an underlying condition as reflected with a behavioral health diagnosis or a substance abuse issue. It's I think more challenging to identify when someone is struggling and thinking that that's an option. So I just a couple other things when I think about social isolation, and I would just think, as you relate with your friends and family, of the impact of COVID and what that's done to people's mental health, and that sense of being lonely and isolated. So we don't have the data right now to exactly show, an impact on our suicides, but I know there are reports that show that, prior to COVID, maybe 20% of the population would come back and say they feel isolated, where just back in August, there were 28% who really reported feeling lonely, and another 41% who felt socially isolated. So in COVID, you might have heard different descriptions about that, is that we don't want people to be socially isolated, right? We want them to be physically distanced, but still find ways to be connected. And, I think in our lives, that's important, is that we just try to stay connected with people and support them. Just go through a couple prevention strategies. I'm not sure, I might be over time. I thought I didn't have enough. So I just go over a couple prevention things that we're, focused on based on that background that I gave you. So one, we're really looking at how do we improve the coping skills of young soldiers who are coming into the Army. And we have a whole range of programs to try to train them on how to improve their resilience. We have specific resilience training that's looking at like mindfulness, hunt the good stuff, those types of different training for them. But we also have like financial training, we have relationship programs, we have frequent opportunities to do checkups with them to see, how they're doing. And I think one of the challenges for the individuals is, one, you want to help them cope, but then they also have to be willing to seek help when they need it, right? They've got to know that they can reach out and get help, and there won't be any repercussions for getting that help. And I think that's the same in greater society, is the willingness of an individual to ask for help. And to me, that's an important component, because a lot of on the other side, our training is focused on what we call bystander intervention training, where you're really trying to get other people to recognize that a soldier has a problem. And that's hard to do, to recognize the signs and symptoms, because I think all of us have had relationship issues, we've had financial issues, we've had loneliness, right? But we didn't choose to kill ourselves. And so how do you recognize the difference when someone's struggling with those issues and does make that choice? So I think an individual knowing enough and feeling confident to seek help themselves is important. But we do have training focused on not just recognizing the signs, but having the willingness to intervene And I think that's another thing in our society that we've kind of lost. You know, I don't know, when I grew up, any parent out there would have felt fine to intervene and correct me if I needed it, you know, and now you don't see that so much. You know, we're more likely to walk by and think it's not our role to get involved in someone else's issue. But so we're trying to get our soldiers to be good battle buddies and really be willing to ask hard, difficult questions about how they're feeling. Are they feeling suicidal? Do they need help? And be willing to actually take action if they do. So that's, you know, kind of part of the training, the other training that we're giving. And then we're also trying to ensure that our leaders get to know their soldiers. So, you know, that they call family members, that they really get to know, and they can actually detect a change in someone, you know, which is hard for us as, you know, with our friends, never mind with just, you know, someone that is working in our squad or platoon. So we've got a lot of programs trying to help our young leaders with that, and to improve their ability to see risk and get them to the resources that they need. And then we're also working on that isolation and that sense of cohesion, as having those unit cohesion, different activities for them. So I think those are some of our main efforts. I think in society, I do believe every touch point an individual has with a medical provider, they should ask those questions. And if you don't get surveyed about that when you go see a provider, you know, you really should. Are you feeling lonely? Have you, woken up and didn't want to wake up, or had thoughts of killing yourselves? And I think there are very effective tools with simple questions to kind of get at those issues. And I think we need to be more consistent in doing that. And then the only other thing I'd add is we are trying to look at ways to improve responsible gun ownership. Of course, we're not trying to restrict ownership, but just to encourage, especially if someone is in any way suicidal. Studies show that if you can remove the means, mostly weapons, and have it take at least 5 minutes for a person to access a weapon, that you would be able to reduce suicides. So we are looking at ways in the military to have safe storage, that soldiers would be willing to use, and to try to, minimize those opportunities to have those impulse suicides. I recognize if someone wants to kill themselves, they're going to regardless. They'll find other means, but so many of them are impulse. And if you let that impulse pass, then you might pass the crisis and resolve it in another way. So those are the things I wanted to address. I hope I didn't go on too long, and be happy to answer any questions.
Bonnie, could you just say a few words about your experience as a woman in the military?
Sure. So of course I came in quite a few years ago. I joined the Army in '83. And so we had a lot more restrictions in terms of, and lower numbers of women at that time. And so, let's see, I don't know. So I would say we've moved in a direction where women are more integrated. We've opened up our combat specialties to them. But the problem that we have, and it doesn't matter if it was back in the 80s or now, is when you have really small numbers of women, you still don't fit in. And there's still really challenges of the culture about just basic standards and how you're treated and everything. And I think until you get to a higher percentage of women serving, we'll continue to see those particular challenges. I would tell you overall, I never thought of myself as a woman in the military, but I every now and then I'd sit there and realize, as I'm in it doesn't matter, a small conference room or a huge auditorium, I might be the only woman in there. But it didn't look different to me because I was looking out, and I saw all guys. And I realized, I looked different when they were looking out, but mostly I tried just to be a good teammate. And I think, I'll just leave it at that. I think issues of sexual harassment and assault, I think, are probably no different than maybe they are in the rest of society. There are things that we have to deal with, and there are ways to do that. So,
Okay, Bonnie, there are a couple of messages in the chat room. People can read the first one. It's more of an informational update, but then we also have a question here. Are the majority of commanding officers supportive of soldiers seeking mental health treatment?
yeah, so that's a lot of debates of whether or not there's still stigma about seeking help or not. We are trying hard to reduce the stigma, and we can message that and encourage it. But I think we have some policies in place that still cause soldiers to be concerned. So some would be concerned about, will it have an impact on my security clearance, that I've sought help? Will it have an impact on my ability to go be a recruiter or a drill sergeant? And so soldiers continue to have a real concern about the impact on their career. And they have a concern if their peers know about it, that they went to get help, would they be considered weak? If they're taking time away from the unit, will they be considered, a burden to the unit? So while commanders might message that and encourage it, I think we still have work to do. I'd like to see more of our really senior leaders admit that they've sought help. We just had our 4-star presented at a conference and talked about the relationship counseling that he and his wife had, of just trying to say, hey, we needed help too. We've had our problems and we sought help and we're okay. And I think we've got to do more of that.
Okay. And then Chris Gannis is asking if you can say something about MST, I guess that's military sex trauma, and the change, it will be handled by civilian authorities so that the alleged perpetrator won't be covered up for.
Yeah, so that's really is the debate that's ongoing right now. There's a I Am Specialist Guillen Act that's moving through Congress right now. It's been maybe a decade that Congress has been pushing the services to take the prosecution of perpetrators away from commands. And so, in fact, just before I joined this meeting, we were looking at our different options of what that would look like to have the prosecutorial decisions outside the chain of command. There are a lot of challenges with it. The military has always been against it because that is the commander's, they're responsible for good order and discipline. And so it's like a lack of trust in our commanders that they're not imposing good order and discipline across every, action. But right now, I think it looks like Congress is going to direct that we do that. So what we're looking at in the Army right now is to set up an approach where the commander still has responsibility for prevention kind of activities and maintaining that discipline and healthy environment in their units, and then have this separate entity that would, the report of a sexual harassment or sexual assault would go to the separate entity that would decide whether or not they had the evidence to prosecute or not. I do think, in some ways the services maybe get a little bit of a bad, rap on this, because I think we do prosecute more cases than would happen in the civilian society. As you guys know, it's a tough crime to prosecute effectively. And so I do think they take on quite a few of the cases, but it's an area that we're going to have to really react to Congress on right now, I think.
Here we have a question from Joanne Litton. What do you think the impact of the new Army combat fitness test will be on women in the Army? I know you'll pass it.
No, it's a great question. What we see is women are not as successful with this fitness test. And, there's a lot of back in some areas that this is inherent discrimination and that the fitness test is supposed to be age and gender neutral. And there's certain events, especially the leg tuck, that women really are failing at a very high percentage rate. And, you know, evidence shows they've got to work out probably 10 times as hard to ever get to a point where they can pass that particular event. So I think Congress has put some of that on hold right now. They're having to come back with some assessments on the impact on women so that, you know, it doesn't discourage them. Because clearly right now, women are not faring as well with that test as we did with the previous test. So I think it will get relooked, and the standard will change, and it will be more fair to women in the long run.
Okay. And then we have a final question, I would say here again from Chris Gannison. It sounds to me like Chris knows a lot of the acronyms and lingo here, but she says, have the MFLCs made a big difference as they keep no records and are assigned to schools, so very accessible to families?
Yeah, so the MFLCs are the military family life counselors, and they've been a great asset to our soldiers and our families. So we have they're civilians who are contracted by the Department of Defense and provide direct services down to our brigades. And so you'll have a civilian who has a master's degree and is a provider. Technically, they're giving non-clinical care, even though they have the skills probably to do more. And they're there to, as noted in the question, they're at our schools, but they're also within our brigades. And so sometimes that's less intimidating for a soldier or family to go to someone like that who's independent from the command and isn't going to report back any of their issues or concerns. So I think that that's been a positive aspect of having them. We're right now looking to increase them in some of our units, and we're trying a process where every soldier has a session with a military family life counselor. And we're trying to do that, one, to identify issues that they might have, and two, to reduce the stigma of seeking help. So, you know, we just set it up on a routine basis to go talk to that individual and hopefully identify further services that they might need and reduce stigma. I haven't worked as much with the ones that are located in the schools. I do know, like, a lot of our commands want to make sure that their kids have access to them, but I really haven't looked hard at how well they're distributed across our schools and the support that they're giving. So I can't really answer that specifically.
Okay, Bonnie, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I learned a lot, and I'm really proud and pleased that our Army and military in general, I'm sure, is looking into these issues and providing these kinds of programs. It's extremely important, and very pleased to hear it. So thank you. I owe you a nice bottle of red wine.
Just one that you don't finish is fine. It was nice to meet all of you.
Take care. Bye-bye. We have a business meeting now, so we'll
Okay.
stay.
I'll jump off then.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say thank you so much, Agnes, for setting this up. She was so impressive. I am so proud of a woman serving in that capacity and all her credentials. And she does do something really important. And maybe as a follow-up, since she's your neighbor, that's wonderful. Maybe you can talk with her about possibly some things that we can assist her or do as a league to support, since we're so close to Fort Bragg. And fortunately, it seems like they get a lot of support in the community and in the schools. But if there's anything additional that maybe we as a league can do for her, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
We'll look at that.
now we're going to start our business meeting, and Agnes, we're going to turn it over right to you again to tell us about your plans, upcoming plans.
Yeah, and I'll just mention before we leave the topic of Bonnie, she actually joined ROTC, when she was in, I guess, high school. And so if any of you have relatives who take that route, they can end up as a colonel. But she's a great neighbor. So this item on the agenda here, the new member reception, Kelly Hardy and I are planning this for June 3rd at my house from 5 to 7 p.m. I sent email invitations out to 11 people who have joined in the last year. I kind of went back quite a bit, but also in 21 also. And so far I've had 5 people respond really enthusiastically. It's been delightful to get their responses, because I put it out as we will have this event if enough people respond that they want to attend. And the responses I'm getting are people saying, I would love to attend. I hope you get enough people. Let's do this. And so far out of the 11, I've had no one say they can't do it, but I have not heard from anyone yet. So I have heard positive response from 5 people. So we will go ahead with it. We're also going to invite, because Kelly Hardy and I both live in Mid-South, we have a number of neighbors who we think might be interested in membership in the league. So we're going to go ahead and invite them. So it's really kind of a new member and a prospective member reception.
Okay, thank you, Agnes. Agnes, if the people listening in now, if perhaps there's someone we know that's really interested, could we let you know about that and possibly have them come?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going to turn it over to Jay.
Hi, everybody. I get to do the bad news here, I guess. So I think we've told you this before, but we just want to make sure that people are aware of the fact that there will be a dues increase for the next fiscal year. The dues are going to go up by $10 for individual members and $15 for family members. So it will go up from $50 to $60 and from $75 to $95 for a family. We did an analysis. This happened last year. We looked at other leagues throughout North Carolina and other places in the US. And we also looked at some other groups like Kiwanis and other kind of groups like that. And it turned out that our $50 dues were really on the low end. And we actually only, at $50, only retained $6 for the Moore County League, and the rest of it goes to either the National League or the State League to support the very good work that they do. The other thing I wanted to tell you that there will be a change this year, because it just seems like perennially there's confusion about when people should pay their dues. And I know I've paid my dues twice in 1 year, just not being sure. So you're actually going to get an invoice this year, and don't do anything now, because we don't want any more dues payment until after the beginning of our fiscal year, which is July 1st. But you can wait until you get an invoice, and from Rose Powers, our treasurer, who couldn't be here today. And once you get the invoice, if you could pay promptly, we would appreciate it. So going on to the next agenda item, the annual meeting and the voting is going to be coming up in June. As per our bylaws, we do have an annual meeting where we vote on things every June. The things that we will be voting on is a new slate of officers for the next fiscal year, the proposed program plan, which kind of talks about what kind of activities we want to support and be involved in, a new budget, and also there are a couple of relatively minor bylaw changes, a couple of bylaw changes that are really coming down from the state and from national. And we just want to align our definitions with theirs. So the one thing that I do want to tell you about, so it's not a big surprise when it comes out, is that It doesn't seem like a whole lot of people wanted to step up and be president next year. So we're going to be doing something a little bit more innovative and creative. We are going to have an executive management team, and there will be 6 of us on the team, and we'll take turns in leading things. It will be 3 new candidates and 3 past presidents that will be kind of partnering with them. So you will be seeing your ballot with these draft program plan, budget, bylaw changes, and the slate come into your email within the next day or so, maybe today, hopefully today, if not today, tomorrow. And I do urge you to please just respond yay or nay in an email to our league email, LWVMC-Pres2. This will all be in the email. You just hit reply and it will come back. We need a quorum of at least 31 responses before we can make this official. And we would like to have them back no later than June 14th. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to give either Joan or myself a call. Okay, I think that's it. Joan, back to you.
Okay, as Jay just explained, our June meeting will be our final member meeting for this year. It's called the annual meeting. And most importantly, the results of our voting will be announced at that meeting. But even more importantly, it's a celebration that we want you to join. We'll recognize some exceptional members who have worked hard to make the league successful during this pandemic. We keep thinking, wow, it's amazing that we've kept it going, even though it's mostly been virtually. Jay and I will be celebrating the past 2 years of our productive positions as your co-presidents while introducing the new executive board for next year. Our state president, Joe Nicholas, has agreed to be our guest speaker, and she'll give us insight and encouragement as we move forward with the state to support issues to empower voters and defend democracy. You all know, you're all well aware of what's going on, and I think the women of the league are really stepping forward to make sure that our voices are heard at this time as well. So that's really important. But the most exciting news is that we're going to try to actually have it in person. Hopefully, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, get vaccinated. And I'll be working to find a location. Actually, interestingly, because Jay and I talked yesterday, I'm going to be going to dinner at Mid Pines this evening with some friends from here. And what we're going to do is try to connect with Mid Pines. And we're not sure the dining room will be open, but they have a big area in the back that perhaps we can set up something so that we can meet there in person. And again, Jay, bless her heart, and we're both looking at the possibility we'll have it in person, but we'll also try to Zoom as well, so people can be engaged in both ways. So we're really excited about that because it's really good news to know that we're able to kind of get out there a little bit more than we have in the past. So there will definitely be more information to come on that, so be aware of it. And of course, we'll have to have some way of knowing how many people will be there in person. Moving on for the next agenda item, the board met and we approved a new representative from the League of Women Voters, Moore County, to the Ruth Polly board, and that is Mary Roca. We're so excited to have her so involved. I'm not sure if she's on now or not.
I saw her come in.
Oh, Mary, why don't you chime in a little bit as soon as I'm finished? She's agreed to be our representative for the next 3 years. So Mary, can you show us your face and tell us hello so everybody knows who you are? Mary's a relatively new member of the league, but she's been extremely active and she has lots of talents. And she's been working particularly on the DEI team. So Mary, are you there?
Hi, everybody. And thank you, Joan, for putting me on the spot.
Sorry about that, Mary. I should have contacted you.
That's
I
okay.
apologize.
No
You're
worries.
good at just improvising, I know.
Well, I'm in the middle of 25 things, so I'm not camera ready right now, but I am super excited to take over, to be the liaison with the Ruth Polly lecture series board, and also to join the board for the league. So I'm excited about what's coming up, and I'll of course be reporting back to our meetings what's happening and what's upcoming. So just really looking forward to being more participatory.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary, and I'll make it up to you in some way.
No worries.
Thanks
you,
thanks for joining us. And also, as what we will do, and we're recognizing her right now, but Wilma Laney has been on the board for 6 years, and 3 of those years she served as secretary. She did a wonderful job, again, representing us there. We'd like to recognize her now, but also probably at our June meeting as well. Great job, Wilma.
I just want to clarify, Joan, that Wilma has been on the Ruth Polly board, not the league board.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Ruth Polly board.
Wilma isn't on today.
Yeah, Mary will be taking her place, her position. Okay, I think that's all for, encouraging you, please join us in June. It would be great to see people in person. Okay, back to you, Jay.
Okay, I think that there was perhaps a request to hear from Tina Ganis or Bonnie Matthews on some of the things that they're doing with the Healthcare League Action Team. So if either one of you guys can say something.
I'll be glad to have an addendum. Bonnie represents us at the board meetings, and something came up after the last board meeting that we were invited by the NAACP to have a healthcare table at the John Lewis event in Southern Pines Downtown Park. I guess it's been 2 weekends ago now. So as you know, I've been active in healthcare for a long time. So I had these binders that I got together on every aspect of healthcare, from aging to veterans, alphabetically. And Holly gave us some additional things. I don't know if you remember that she had some sheets, out of 8.5 by 11 that we could cut in quarters and distribute to lots and lots of people to remind them that with the new Biden family plan, rescue plan, family plan hasn't passed yet, that there are new benefits under those plans that have shrunk the donut hole. Now it's not gone, but it's shrunk so that veterans might be eligible, single parents, people with 2 jobs, and so on and so on. People who might have been on the edge of not being qualified for healthcare maybe now are. So we gave those out at that fair. Now we have an upcoming thing that I wanted to mention, and that is Olinda's going to have an Wear Orange event that ties into something our last speaker talked about gun safety. She envisions having, this is part of a national set of events like the John Lewis event that is going to hopefully focus on the losses that communities have suffered because of gun violence. So not necessarily suicide, but in addition to suicide, gun violence, drive-by shootings. And we have a number of parents in this area who have lost children to gun violence. So she is in contact with those people. I'm in contact with the mental health community. Hopefully we can have a reverent, calm, healing kind of ceremony, kind of like we did with the candlelight vigil. But that's a work in progress. It's going to happen sometime in June. So I'd like to have the league's blessing that we can do that as part of the league. The event that happened in the park, the National signed on to it, but we did not, in the press conference, I didn't mention that, our local league was sponsoring this event. So that's a lot of information. There's a new Medicaid game that the NCHCLAT has developed. If you go on medicaidmadness.org or .com, I forget which now, you'll be able to play the Medicaid game to see if you qualify for the new benefits. So that's it in a nutshell. Lots going on, but we can talk later if anybody's interested. Thanks.
Thank you, Tina. I think there was somebody else, wasn't there, John, that wanted to say something?
If Ann Tark is on, does she have anything to say about membership?
Ann. I don't think Ann is on.
Okay.
So I think it wraps it up. I just want to, I'm going to put my screen up again. And just to kind of highlight the upcoming events. Things are winding down now at the end of the year, but we have our board meeting. It will probably be virtual on June 1st, although maybe we should talk about that, Joan. We have the new and prospective member reception at Agnes's home on June 3rd that she just told us about. And then of course our annual meeting, which we hope, we're going to keep our fingers crossed, will be in person on June 15th. So that's it. It's, I think we can end the meeting. Does anybody else have anything else they want to share right now? Okay, everybody, thanks for joining. Agnes, thank you for arranging Bonnie to speak to us. It was really interesting, I thought, and a little bit different. So thanks, everybody. Really good to see you all, and look for the ballot coming out in the mail.
Bye-bye.